Sometimes pretending to be someone else can be the only way to discover who we truly are. Eton College had never seen anything like it. It wasn't the scandal of secretly exchanged letters between young ladies and gentlemen, nor the clandestine midnight fencing duel. This time, it was a new student, or was it a new boy? Eleanor Bennet, the youngest daughter of a stubborn viscount and twin sister of Edward Bennet, decided that if she couldn't face the world as a woman, she would do it as a man. "It's not just about the team, it's about the principle," said Eleanor, clumsily adjusting her cravat in the mirror. Her reflection returned a look filled with determination and fear. The team was Eton's cricket club, a passion she had nurtured since childhood. However, the world, especially one dominated by men in impeccable coats and stifling traditions, seemed relentlessly against her. "You're going to get in trouble," warned Mary, her longtime maid and accomplice, holding the tall hat that completed the disguise. "One wrong move and goodbye reputation, goodbye everything." Mary crossed her arms, but her mischievous smile betrayed her support. With a sigh, Eleanor put on her brother's coat, now tailored to fit her slender frame. The difference between the two was subtle. Both shared the same height, with brown hair that shifted between light brown in the sun and a deep, almost melancholic shade in dim light. Edward, however, had been sent off to Scotland, leaving Eleanor with the perfect opportunity to take his place at Eton. Thus, Edwin Bennet was born, a young man with a timid appearance and carefully rehearsed manners. Eleanor knew that a single mistake, a poorly chosen word or a gaze held too long, could shatter her charade. But as she arrived at the gates of Eton, dressed as Edwin, she felt something unexpected: freedom. The first cricket lesson was a minefield of nerves. The team captain, Thomas Dunsley, renowned for his imposing leadership and perpetually furrowed brow, scrutinized Edwin with critical eyes. "Bennet, huh? I hope you're better than you look," he said, tossing a ball directly into Eleanor's hands. She caught it gracefully, though her palm throbbed from the impact. In that moment, she realized the challenges would go far beyond merely appearing convincing as a young gentleman. Among her concerns were not only the lessons and tournaments, but also a new, unexpected element: William Ashford, her roommate and heir to one of the largest fortunes in England. William, with unruly brown hair and a natural charm that seemed effortless, was everything Eleanor despised and, at the same time, found fascinating. He had the annoying habit of smiling lazily and delivering biting remarks, yet there was something about him, something in his quieter moments, that Eleanor couldn't ignore. "You seem nervous, Bennet," William remarked one evening as they shared the small dormitory. "First time away from home?" Eleanor, choking on her words, nodded and murmured, "Something like that." She realized that living so closely with someone like William would be a far greater test than learning how to bowl a cricket ball. The days at Eton turned into a delicate game of chess for Eleanor. As Edwin, every word and gesture had to be carefully calculated. But William Ashford was a force of nature, a whirlwind that disrupted her strategies. "You're awfully quiet for someone from such a talkative family," he remarked during breakfast, tilting his head curiously. "Got something to hide?" "Or maybe I'm just a good listener," Eleanor replied with a restrained smile, staying true to her role as a shy young man. William raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. I can't decide if I like that or find it dangerous." Eleanor swallowed hard. He was far too perceptive for her liking, and for her safety. But the biggest surprise didn't come from William. It came from Olivia Harrington. Known as the muse of every local ball, Olivia wasn't in the habit of paying attention to newcomers at Eton. Yet one encounter in the main courtyard was enough to spark something in her gaze when she saw Edwin. "Bennet, isn't it?" she asked, her melodic voice sounding like a song. Eleanor could barely respond, not for lack of skill, but because Olivia was stunning. Her blonde hair fell like a cascade, and her smile carried the perfect mix of sweetness and audacity. "Looks like someone's caught Miss Harrington's eye," William teased later as they tidied the dormitory. Eleanor scoffed, feigning disinterest. She was just being polite. But Olivia wasn't merely polite, she was persistent. The casual encounters became frequent, and the young aristocrat made a point of reserving her most charming words for Edwin. This began to draw suspicious looks, particularly from Thomas Dunsley, who apparently thought Edwin was becoming too distracted from cricket. "You need to decide where your priorities lie," Thomas said after a particularly grueling practice. "This team isn't a place for the undecided." Eleanor clenched her fists but replied firmly, "My priorities are clear, and my performance will prove it." Thomas merely grunted, but Eleanor knew he was watching her more closely than ever. Meanwhile, Eleanor's relationship with William was becoming a web of moments filled with tension and humor. He seemed determined to unravel Edwin. One evening, as they played cards in the dormitory, William remarked, "You have a strange way of dodging questions, like you're always choosing your words carefully. Why is that?" Eleanor responded quickly, her voice steady. "Because I think before I speak. A good habit. You should try it sometime." William laughed heartily, but his eyes remained fixed on her as if waiting for her to slip up. "Something tells me you're not what you seem, Bennett. But I'll figure it out." To make matters worse, Olivia decided to invite Edwin to a private picnic in the school gardens. "I don't take no for an answer," she said, handing over a note with a time written on it. Eleanor knew refusing would look suspicious, but accepting meant stepping into dangerous territory. After all, how could she maintain her composure in front of Olivia while William, increasingly watchful, was always nearby? When Eleanor arrived at the gardens for the picnic, she found Olivia sitting under a leafy fig tree, surrounded by cushions and treats fit for a banquet. "You came?" Olivia exclaimed, rising with an excitement that made Eleanor swallow hard. "I was beginning to think polite gentlemen were a dying breed." Eleanor smiled nervously, sitting down beside Olivia while adjusting her posture carefully to conceal her true silhouette. "I don't usually decline invitations from such persistent ladies." Olivia laughed. "I like that. Edwin, you have a peculiar way of intriguing me." As they talked, Eleanor realized Olivia wasn't just a beautiful, spoiled young aristocrat. There was a sharp wit to her that caught Eleanor off guard. Olivia shared anecdotes about high society parties and whispered secrets about the families of Eton. "But enough about me," Olivia said, leaning forward. "What about you, Edwin?" "What's your secret?" Eleanor froze. "Secret?" She tried to sound confused as her fingers tightened around the edge of the cushion. Olivia smiled like a cat that had just caught a mouse. "Everyone has one. You seem different. Not like the other boys. Kinder, more observant. There's something about you." "Maybe I just had a good upbringing," Eleanor replied quickly, skillfully changing the subject. But the intensity in Olivia's gaze didn't waver. Eleanor felt like a pawn in a game she didn't fully understand, and Olivia seemed determined to win. The picnic ended without further incidents, but Eleanor left the gardens with an unsettling feeling. When she returned to the dormitory, she found William waiting for her, leaning casually against the study table. "So, how was the date?" he asked, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. "It wasn't a date," Eleanor retorted, removing her jacket with a calculated motion to avoid disrupting her disguise. "Just a conversation." William tilted his head, examining her with a gaze that seemed to pierce right through her. "Interesting. You're blushing. That doesn't usually happen with ordinary conversations." Eleanor rolled her eyes and decided to change the subject. "And what about you? Why are you so interested in my social life? Don't you have your own secrets to keep?" William laughed, but there was something vulnerable in his smile. "Maybe I do, Bennett. Maybe that's why I'm so curious about yours." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. Between Olivia's cunning and William's growing suspicions, her facade seemed to be crumbling faster than she could hold it together. But there was no time for weakness. The next day, Thomas Dunsley announced that the team would be competing in a major cricket tournament. "I hope you're all prepared," he said, looking directly at Eleanor. "Especially you, Bennett." The cricket field was packed. Flags fluttered in the wind, and the crowd, made up of students, professors, and a few noble guests, roared with excitement at every move. Eleanor adjusted the cuffs of her shirt as she watched the other players warm up. Her mind buzzed with worries, but the most pressing one was simple. Don't make a mistake that would reveal her identity. "Hey, Bennett!" Thomas's voice cracked like a whip. He stood next to William, both ready for the match. "Remember, if you mess up, we all lose. I don't want excuses, I want results." Eleanor nodded, swallowing the sharp retort that threatened to escape. "You'll do fine," William said with a reassuring smile. "After all, you've got something to prove, don't you?" Eleanor wasn't sure if the comment was meant as encouragement or a challenge. Either way, she stepped onto the field with her heart racing. The first plays were intense, but she managed to keep her composure, bowling and batting with precision. Her dedication was evident, and even Thomas had to admit, "Not bad, Bennett." As the game progressed, Eleanor began to relax. But as always, overconfidence was dangerous. Attempting a bold throw, she slipped on the damp grass and fell awkwardly. The impact drew a chorus of gasps from the crowd, and Eleanor felt her heart stop for a moment. "Bennett, are you all right?" William ran over to her, helping her to her feet. "Yes, I'm fine," she replied, quickly grabbing the hat that had almost flown off. But as she looked at William, she noticed something different in his gaze, something more intense. He held her arm a moment longer than necessary and whispered, "Are you sure? It seems like you're always trying to hide something." Before she could answer, Thomas shouted from across the field, "Back to your positions!" Are we losing the match over sentimentality now? The crowd laughed, and William stepped back, but Eleanor could feel the weight of suspicion lingering in the air. However, that moment would mark only the beginning of her troubles. After the match, which, fortunately, Eton won thanks to a brilliant final play by Eleanor, Olivia was waiting at the edge of the field. "Edwin, can I steal you for a moment?" she asked, ignoring the curious glances from other students. Eleanor had no choice but to follow, knowing full well the danger in doing so. "You're fascinating, you know that?" Olivia said, leading her to a more secluded area. "But you're also a tangle of mysteries. Who are you, really?" Eleanor froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." Olivia crossed her arms, leaning forward slightly. "Oh, but you do. Edwin Bennett isn't who he says he is. And strangely enough, that only makes me more intrigued." Eleanor's heart raced. Did Olivia know? Or was she simply trying to provoke a reaction? Before she could answer, movement in the distance caught her attention. William was watching from a discreet distance, his eyes fixed on her. Eleanor realized it wasn't just Olivia who was beginning to put the pieces together. Her facade was unraveling, and she needed to decide what to do before it was too late. The silence in the dormitory was almost palpable that night. Eleanor knew she was at a crossroads. With Olivia and William growing increasingly suspicious, maintaining her charade felt like an impossible task. William, sitting at his desk, watched her with that familiar intensity that made her heart race. "Bennett," he began, his voice low. "There's something about you that doesn't add up, and I'm going to figure out what it is." "Maybe you should focus on your own mysteries," Eleanor retorted, trying to sound casual as she meticulously folded her shirt. But her response came out too rushed, only intensifying William's curious smile. He shook his head and leaned back in his chair, like a hunter who knows his prey is cornered. The next morning, before Eleanor could formulate a plan, Olivia approached her in the hallway with a conspiratorial gleam in her eye. "I need to talk to you. Now." Olivia led her to a more secluded corner. "I know something's off about you, Edwin," she said, her eyes flashing. "And you know what's worse? William is starting to think the same thing." "What exactly do you think you know?" Eleanor asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Olivia smiled, but it wasn't a triumphant smile, and it was kinder, almost empathetic. "I think you're pretending to be someone you're not. And you know what? I understand. This world doesn't make life easy for anyone, especially not for those who don't fit in." Eleanor was speechless. Before she could respond, Thomas Dunsley appeared, his presence commanding the corridor. "Bennett, you're dismissed from frivolous conversations. I need you on the field now." Eleanor quickly nodded, using the excuse as a temporary escape. However, she knew she was running out of time. On the cricket field, the tension was palpable. As they trained for the final match of the tournament, William seemed more distracted than usual. He missed a simple play, something unheard of. "Ashford, focus!" Thomas shouted impatiently. William looked directly at Eleanor and muttered, "Maybe that's what's distracting me." When practice ended, William pulled Eleanor aside. "I need to know the truth," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "Whatever it is you're hiding, I promise I won't tell anyone. But you have to trust me." Eleanor felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. William was more than a teammate or a friend. He was becoming someone who mattered in a way she couldn't ignore. Before she could answer, a commotion erupted at the entrance to the field. A luxurious carriage had arrived, and from it emerged Edward Bennett, Eleanor's real twin brother. He looked both confused and irritated as he was surrounded by students and teachers. "What's going on here? And why does everyone think I'm at Eton?" Eleanor froze. William, Olivia, and even Thomas were now staring at her and Edward, trying to piece together the puzzle. William was the first to speak, his voice laden with incredulity. "So that's it. You're not Edwin Bennett. You're..." Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling the weight of months of lies collapse around her. "I'm Eleanor," she said firmly, "and I can explain everything." Epilogue. The cost of truth. Eleanor's revelation caused an uproar at Eton. Thomas shouted about broken rules, Olivia seemed caught between shock and admiration, and William simply stood in silence, his eyes fixed on her as if trying to comprehend every word she was saying. But surprisingly, Eleanor's explanation wasn't entirely condemned. She spoke passionately about her struggle to find a place in the world, about her love for cricket, and how pretending to be Edwin had given her the freedom to be her true self. Olivia, unexpectedly, was the first to defend her cause. "If she plays better than half the men here, she deserves to stay," she said, crossing her arms with determination. Thomas, however, was not convinced. "You broke the rules, and at Eton that has consequences." But before he could continue, William intervened. "Maybe Eton needs new rules. We can't condemn someone for wanting to be part of something great." Gradually, the situation began to calm. Although Eleanor couldn't officially remain as a student, she was granted permission to finish the tournament with the team, under the condition that her secret would be kept until the end. The night before the decisive match, Eleanor and William met in the gardens. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words until William finally broke it. "You deceived me, Eleanor, but strangely, it only made me admire you even more." Eleanor laughed nervously. "Admiration isn't exactly what I was expecting to hear." William smiled, stepping closer. "Then maybe I'm choosing the wrong word." He leaned in, and for the first time, Eleanor felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not as Edwin, but as herself. The final tournament was a spectacle. Eleanor played with all her heart, securing Eton's victory and earning the respect of everyone, even Thomas. As the team celebrated, Olivia approached her with a knowing smile. "You know, Eleanor, I really liked you as Edwin, but you as Eleanor? Even better." After the tournament, Eleanor decided to leave Eton. Her journey there had come to an end, but something new was beginning. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she knew she would face it with the same courage that had brought her this far. And as she climbed into the carriage beside Edward, she saw William standing at Eton's entrance, waving at her with a smile. He didn't need to say anything. His look said it all. Eleanor left with the certainty that sometimes being true to ourselves, even amid secrets and chaos, is the greatest victory of all. Subscribe, like, share.